Hey, Bob. Uh, I'm curious if you're talking about building out a global QPU environment. And I know we're not there yet, but if you start to build this out in terms of security in the future, how will we ensure that rogue nations and bad actors don't infiltrate the QPU and access proprietary data?
So we can ask that of every single technology. Right, so you're just asking the quantum version of the standard question. I've got some hot new technology, it's really powerful. It's AI, it's ChatGPT, it's this, whatever. How does a bad person not come in and screw this up and mess us up? So first of all, you have to have, independent of anything related to quantum, you have to have an up-to-date cybersecurity implementation. So shame on you if your encryption protocols are out of date and people known to be able to break it. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, a branch of which is up the street, but this is really the part that's in Washington, is now standardizing what are called post-quantum encryption standards. So these are encryption standards that we believe cannot be broken by quantum computers. And those are just about available to be implemented today. And we think people should, it's not just me, we as an industry think people should be adopting this today because, for example, for a large bank, it can take 10 to 15 years to swap in new cybersecurity protocols. So even if the threat is 15 or 20 years away, it's going to take you that long, and maybe you still won't do it right. The other thing we have to watch out, you didn't ask this specifically, but is the gather the data now and decrypt it later. And that is, if a quantum computer is available in 15 or 20 years that can break the data, you might say, well, it's my medical data. I'm really not thrilled that they stole this data back in 2023 about me, but it's maybe not the end of the world. It's not good, right? If it's your financial information and you haven't changed the password, that's still not good. But think of government classified information. There is an awful lot of information from 15 or 20 or 30 years ago that is still highly, highly classified, that if people could get now, even if they can't decrypt it now, but could decrypt it in the future, they're trying to steal. So the center of my response is you must use the most modern cybersecurity protocols, including the post-quantum ones. Regarding specifically quantum hardware, look at what we do for high-performance computers. It's very similar. The same sort of entry points would be the same. There's nothing special because it's quantum.
Hello, thank you so much for the presentation. I know that there are different approaches for quantum computing, like cold atom system and superconductivity. I understand that some of them are actually really useful for field deployment application, like sensors. But my question is about superconductivity, since you had experience with that. Do you see any opportunity for high temperature superconductivity for this technology that, reduce the size? You talk about 9 feet cubic, system.
Make it smaller?
Yeah, make it smaller. Like I see that there are technologies like laser cooling in solids. They have reached to cryogenic temperature as low as like 90 Kelvin, things like that. Do you see any opportunity there? Thanks.
So kind of to paraphrase, so we've got superconducting quantum computers. They take up a lot of room with the refrigeration. Can we miniaturize that to maybe make superconducting quantum technologies more pervasive, right? I'm sure people are thinking about that, but it's not going to be much smaller, right? If you think of the freezer, your refrigerator and freezer in your house, and I'm not talking about where the food is actually kept. I'm talking about the refrigerator and freezer. It's a little smaller in size than what it was maybe 20 years ago, but it's maybe only like half as big, right? It's not a tenth of the size or a hundredth of the size. So there's only so much And there's no way of doing like laser cooling on superconducting chips, right? I mean, lasers would actually absolutely fry them. So they'll be able to get somewhat smaller, but I think they're going to be limited. And part of what I think is the evidence for this is one of the vendors started talking about quantum supercomputers. And if you look at a supercomputer, it fills a football-sized room, right? I mean, in terms of, it's huge. And part of, it's not an unreasonable thing to say, look, we'll worry about miniaturization later, we hope. Let's worry about making a powerful enough quantum computer now. That's not our problem, right now. We're just trying to make one good, big, fast machine. We have plenty of room. And that's not unreasonable, but you have to have your doubts there. And the other question is energy. Because all this refrigeration is going to require a lot of energy, right? And now, what is your energy budget for doing these computations? It's a difficult thing, because if I'm trying to compute something I've never been able to compute before, I can't say it's more sustainable than that, because there's nothing to compare it to. So it is one of these factors as you look at the different technologies. It's a very valid thing to ask about the potential energy use and to compare at least among different quantum computers. One place where this has come up in a non-quantum way is, so ChatGPT, the most amazing thing in the world, except when it's totally wrong, right? And things like this. Do you know how much energy those things burn? How many GPUs are behind that, right? There's tremendous amount of energy, and people get very excited about them, and it's really, in my opinion, very overhyped. It's clever, it's new, and in 2 years we'll be looking back and saying, remember when we all thought that was so great, just like we did everything, and then we discovered this, that, and whatever. So a much bigger problem, in the AI world is energy usage. So that will enter in, it's just another angle on your quantum thing. So yes, how much refrigeration, what is the size, but what is the energy to do comparable computations? So to be at the edge, it's got to be relatively low energy.
Bob, once again, a very nice presentation. Thanks for that. You had a beautiful slide which showed different generation of your clock, which will allow you to go to capture a bigger financial market.
Right.
And at one point you said like less than 5K. I mean, one of the subsystems in the clock would be the photonic integrated circuits and lasers.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
One of the subcomponents on the clock would be lasers and photonic integrated circuits. So is the most of the funding coming just from the government initiatives, or do you have healthy long-term private investors from the financial sectors who understands the amount of time it takes to come to that generation of solutions?
It's kind of mixed. So certainly government and defense is very interested in clocks. And that's probably where a lot of the funding will come from around the world. There are certain, the usual very large companies that are very concerned with this. So this is not us, but let me say that Amazon, AWS made a lot of noise about quantum computing, and now almost the only thing they talk about is quantum networking, right? And a big part of what they do in any of the big companies, cloud-based companies, they're going to need clocks, and they're going to need accurate clocks just for their, the amount of data they push around and what they're trying to do with it, AI or otherwise. So there is interest, let me say, in the very large companies that have very large cloud-based infrastructures in the clocks. So yes, they're interested. But the ones you'll hear about will be government and defense first.
Maybe last question?
My name is Vignesh. I'm a postdoc from Los Alamos National Lab. So I really like the idea of this network of quantum. So do you mean that do we need a complete rewiring of existing technologies or something related? For example, if you have fiber optics, you need some something that is adaptable to the current one. Otherwise, the business side will.
You don't have to lay all new cable and things like that, but you're going to need quantum repeaters that you don't use now. You're going to have to support basically entanglement across the wire, right? Which we can't do today at all, in any which way. There's also a lot of work done on what quantum networks will look like. Here, for simplicity, I showed it point to point, but really there's probably going to be intermediate nodes, right, that store and forward in different ways with quantum information. So I think you can build it on existing networks, but you're going to choose small clusters. Just as you're starting to see, like Knoxville, Tennessee, has built a very nice quantum network, not in terms of like entanglement and all that, but from a security perspective. So you basically put your arms around an area and you say, this is what we're going to do. Let's say a national lab, you could do that. Right? So that's what I would anticipate, but not rip and replace.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, well, thank you very much.
thank you.